I play smarter. I invest with Morning Line. You build your stable. When they race, you earn. Buy, sell, trade, anytime. Morning Line. Own the game.
Hi, everyone. David Aragona and Mike Beer here, taking a look at a large field signed on for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. This one goes as race 6 on that Breeders' Cup Saturday card, and you've got a lot of large fields and interesting races to handicap on this Breeders' Cup Saturday. You definitely want to do a deep dive with your daily racing form past performances, so pick up one of these DRF packages. You can save $38 of the value on everything included, including the clocker reports, the betting strategies, player's guide, and a whole lot more. So check out more information about these packages at shop.drf.com or by using that QR code on screen. Let's throw up the large field of 14 runners plus one AE that were entered for this Breeders' Cup Sprint. And Mike, not surprising to see this race draw a large field this year because all season long kind of feels like this sprint division's been pretty wide open. And just when we had a horse that was sort of starting to win a series of races and looked like the early favorite, Bookham Dano's connections decided he's not even going to contest the Breeders' Cup. So with him out of here, it's a wide open race.
Yeah, it's been a sort of that kind of a division all year long, as you pointed out. Bookham Dano did sort of establish himself as the top sprinter, but he's not here. I think that's not only why you have a big field, David, it's also why you have the filly Copion electing to run in this race, because it just feels like if she can show up and run her good race here going 6, it's not a bad spot for her at all.
It is an intriguing development to see the filly taking on the boys in this Breeders' Cup Sprint. Richard Mandela and Spendthrift Farm are going to split up their top 2 in the filly and mare sprint. We'll talk about Tamara's chances in that video. But Copion, she's fast enough to hang with the boys here, including the morning line favorite, the number 10, Ben Tornado, who's coming off an impressive victory last time. We'll see if he can reproduce it again. Second off the layoff. And Ben Tornado is one of those that has a lot of early speed. Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this Breeders' Cup Sprint, because no surprise in a large field, Mike, that you could have a lot of speed. And when you go through it, especially towards some of the outside post positions, it does feel like there is a ton of speed in this race, and it's not going to be a surprise when things come apart at the end.
Yeah, they're supposed to go fast here. I mean, there's a bunch of speed horses, and a lot of them are drawn to the outside, so it feels like they've got to go in here. They're going for $2 million, too, going 6 furlongs, so they better be going early in here to see who the best sprinter is. It'll be interesting, too, to see how this pace affects, because you do, especially that you see on the pace projector, you have Straight No Chaser and Ben Tornado, who are very logical contenders in this race, sort of up there on a fast pace with some long shots who could really be pushing the action.
Yeah, Madhouse, the number 13, who's drawn outside of the mall. He might be the fastest of all in the early stages. He's got to go. Mulligan's not slow. Patriot Spirit. Even the horse not shown in this pace projector, the number 9, American Stage. He's a speed horse from Japan. So things could really heat up in the early stages of this Breeders' Cup Sprint. Let's go through this large field from the rail out, beginning with the number 1, Copion, the 4-year-old filly taking on the males here for the first time. But Mike, she does not have to get a whole lot faster to beat this field. She just has to run her A race, do it going 6 furlongs, and do it from a difficult rail post position in this large field. That's a minor concern, but she did prove that she could overcome not an ideal trip from an inside post when she won the Derby City Distaff going 3 starts back, and she beat a really good field of fillies that day that included Hope Road, one of the favorites of the filly and mare sprint, Ways and Means, who looked like she was going to be the early favorite for the Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint before she went to the sidelines, a 109 buyer that was paired up with a 110 that she earned in the Santa Monica. She's lost her last couple of starts, Mike, but I think you can make minor excuses for both of those races.
I agree. And she's going to turn back in this race too, which is, it's only going to help her. I mean, I think what's notable too, David, about her big win there in the Derby City Distaff on Derby Day is that she did it off the pace, sitting behind horses, getting to the outside and making a big run. And it feels like maybe that trip will be available to her. And here, do you have to concern yourself with her going a fast 6 furlongs here when she's mostly been, sort of a 7 furlong kind of horse? I guess you do. And you got to worry a little bit about the rail too. But as you've already alluded to, she's plenty talented enough and fast enough to go with these horses.
And if there is one horse all Breeders' Cup weekend whose workouts have really wowed me coming in here, it is Copion. That 112 drill back on October 18th, I think was the work that gave Richard Mandela the confidence to go in this race instead of the filly and mare sprint. The number 2, Banishing, like, he is versatile. He's hard knocking. He just runs his race every single time, no matter the distance, no matter the company. He started out the year looking like a sprinter. Coming into the beginning of 2025, he was running well in 6 furlong races at Oaklawn Park. David Jacobson stretched him out, which seemed crazy at the time, but he got as far as 1.125 when he won the Charlestown Classic 2-back. He faced a good field, wasn't quite good enough to overcome a wide trip last time, the Lucas Classic, but this turn back to 6 furlongs is pretty interesting, especially considering the way that he started his season.
Yeah, listen, turnbacks are usually pretty good. I mean, dropping back, 3 full furlongs, that's not an easy thing to do. Yeah. But this horse, it just feels like no matter what Jacobson throws at this horse, it doesn't matter. He just shows up and runs. You have to sort of parse through his PPs a little bit. But this horse has really only sprinted 6 times in his life. He's 5 for 6 in those races. He's got a couple of huge speed figures in those. And the only loss was in that grade 1 on Derby Day. He ran a giant race against arguably a better field than this one that day to just miss. Listen, I don't know if he's going to be able to just throw in another top performance and beat this field, but I would not be surprised, and I'm definitely using this horse.
And we should know, we've been talking about David Jacobson. Chad Summers is the listed trainer. It was a licensing issue in Southern California that did not allow Jacobson to be the named trainer, but he's the one who prepared this horse for the race. The number 3, Lovesick Blues. He earned a grade 1 victory going 6 furlongs at Del Mar in the Bing Crosby this past summer. We'll take a look at the replay of that race. And Mike, not exactly sure where this came from because this was always a really good California bred. He could run well sprinting on both dirt and turf, but it feels like out of nowhere he produced this career best effort for trainer Librado Barocchio, who does really well in all situations with sprinters in Southern California. I don't know if this effort, even if he reproduces it, is going to be good enough to win this race, but he did get a pretty interesting prep in last time down the hill at Santa Anita.
Yeah, that's true. They did it, and they're going to go turf to dirt again here. That's the turf to dirt move led to that big win that we just watched right there. Again, he's going to have to repeat that race and maybe then some if he's going to be effective in this spot. But listen, he ran really well the last time he was on dirt. He was a big price that day. He'll be a big price on Saturday.
The number 4, Patriot Spirit, is a horse who's tried going longer in the past. He's gone shorter recently, and it feels like sprint distances are really what he wants. I think the big question for the Vosburg winner, Mike, is just how good is he really sprinting and how fast does he have to run to be competitive in this race? And is it just a little bit outside of his scope?
I think it might be. I mean, listen, I appreciate that this horse is maybe in the best form of his life right now. And so his connections want to take a shot here at the Breeders' Cup. But, he hasn't run a race yet that's going to beat this field. And he also, his best races come when he's, sort of involved early. And I don't think that's going to work out too well for him in this spot.
The number 5, Big City Lights, is a pretty lightly raced 6-year-old. He's had a lot of stops and starts in his career, but he's really good when he shows up on the track in top form. He was sort of chasing the Chosen Vron going back to the 2022 and 2023 seasons. That was one of the top sprinters in the country going back a couple of years. I think would have been the favorite of the Breeders' Cup Sprint before he was vet scratched. I think that was at the end of 2023. Mike, this horse is obviously coming in off a long, long layoff. And Richard Mandela was initially saying that he was pointing this horse to a Calbred Stakes race, but then he's just started working so well that it gave him the confidence that if I've got a horse doing this well, I can't not run him in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. So he's going to take a shot, but this horse is going to need to bring his A effort off the long layoff.
Yeah, there's just so much working against him. I understand that his last 2 races, and they were a while ago, but the last 2 races are both really compelling performances, but there's so much working against this horse, David. There's just no way that I could bet him in this race.
The number 6, Dr. Venkman, is a horse who has only won 1 race this season. That was in the 7 furlong Pat O'Brien over the summer at Del Mar. And I really think 7 furlongs is probably the ideal distance for this horse, Mike. Cutting back to 6, it's what they've chosen to do. This horse was pre-entered in both the dirt mile and the sprint, and the connections were really on the fence until the last minute before deciding on the sprint. I personally would have liked to see him going a little bit longer because I think he deserves another chance to stretch out around 2 turns based on some of his early races. I just worry that this 6 furlong race, especially with so much speed in here, is going to get away from him early.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, it's one of those situations where you sort of feel like, maybe he could benefit from just sort of trying to take back and make 1 run, but that's not really his style. I don't really see him getting outpaced working for him in here. And overall, David, I just don't really like any of his races. I don't think I'll be, I'm happy to be wrong about this when he runs well. I don't think he's good enough to beat these horses.
You know the thrill of picking a winner. But instead of just running to the window for a quick payout, I play smarter. I invest with Morning Line. Morning Line is a more sophisticated way to use your skill and bankroll without putting it all at risk. Build your stable. When they race, you earn. Buy, sell, trade, anytime. Keep the action rolling without burning your bankroll. This is playing the ponies, elevated like a boss. Morning Line. Own the game.
The number 7, Imagination. We've been talking about turnbacks. He was a turnback last time in the Santa Anita Sprint Championship, where he had gone longer for much of his career. He was on the Derby Trail briefly as a 3-year-old, but Bob Baffert got him back to sprinting last time. We'll take a look at the replay of that race, and he ran really well to win, Mike, because I know it didn't come back the fastest speed figure, only a 97 buyer, but this horse definitely deserves some extra credit for covering so much ground around the turns. He was literally 5 wide all the way around that bend and still is able to run down Dr. Venkman, as well as last year's Breeders' Cup Sprint winner, Straight No Chaser, was coming off a layoff here, and he's doing it while kind of lugging in through the stretch. He doesn't change leads until late. This horse put in a big effort last time. We'll see if he can do it again.
Yeah, I prefer to take the positive view on him too, though. It sounds like maybe you do as well. We'll see. I mean, you could look at that race and say, all right, Dr. Venkman was second, and I don't like him that much. And then Straight No Chaser, who was the favorite, just felt like he needed one off the layoff there and didn't bring his A game. And so maybe that dresses Imagination's performance up a little bit, but I'm not taking that position. And I thought he ran really, really, really well in that race. And I do think he is way better sprinting than he is routing.
I initially had him way higher up in my picks. I downgraded him a little bit. We'll see that when I get to the end, Mike. But he is a horse that I definitely gave some consideration to in this race. The number 8, Nakatomi, a horse who's run well in the Breeders' Cup Sprint in the past. He is coming in off a victory at Keeneland last time in the Grade 2 Phoenix. Things really worked out for him there. Skelly rushed up and made the pace go a little faster, and Nakatomi was sitting off it, made the last move. It all worked out for him. But, Mike, it's just been a long time since this horse has run a fast enough speed figure to compete at this level.
Yeah, exactly. That was a great spot for him last time. And to his credit, he got the job done. He's a really cool horse, and he tends to show up and run his race every single time. If I was going to use him in this race, David, I'd use him underneath if he was a big price.
The number 9, American Stage, is a runner coming in from Japan for the trainer of Forever Young in the classic, Yoshito Yahagi, who's brought a few Japanese runners over. And Mike, I think this is one of the more intriguing Japanese contenders of the weekend because he competed in a Group 1 race over in Dubai, the Golden Shaheen, when he was still a 3-year-old earlier this year, a 3-year-old taking on some of the best older sprinters in the world in early April of his sophomore season. You almost never see that. And he actually held his own considering the age disadvantage that he was at in that race, finishing behind Nakatomi. He was off for the whole summer, got in a prep race in Japan last time. He's going to have to run better than that, but this horse has a big American pedigree, and he's pretty fast out of the gate.
Yeah, he does seem like he has a good amount of speed, and we'll see how much he's going to be able to move forward with the prep there that he got after the layoff of prep, and now they ship him over here. I just thought he was, such a difficult read because I don't think anything that he was doing, last year when he was winning those races, none of that stuff really got me that interested in him. But you make a really good point about his Golden Shaheen. Maybe you should just upgrade him off of that alone.
Yeah, he's a horse who has a liability to really improve since we saw him earlier in the year. The number 10, Ben Tornado, probably going to be the favorite in this Breeders' Cup Sprint. I pegged him at 5-2 on the morning line. And Mike, he's coming in off a big performance last time at Churchill Downs when he returned from a layoff to win off by over 5 lengths against a pretty good field of sprinters, some that had run some fast speed figures prior to that. And Ben Tornado just smashed them to the tune of a 108 buyer. He's a horse that was just getting better with each and every start through the 2024 season, culminating with that second place finish at a big price in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and felt like he just took the next step forward that was logical as a 4-year-old off the layoff, even though we haven't seen him in so long.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he was awful good last time. And I'll give him a little bit of extra credit too, because it was such a long layoff, and then he comes into that race and his first start back, he's got to deal with a really fast pace, and he was able to deal with it and win going away in there. So I gave him extra credit for that. He can obviously win here. You made him the morning line favorite, and I think he probably deserves to be. But as well as he ran in this race last year, David, he was a huge price, and now he's going to be the favorite in this race. And I don't think, his good race, that last race, obviously makes him really tough in here. But there are other horses in here who can go with this horse. I don't know how willing I'd be to take a short price on him, but I certainly respect him in this race.
I will say he's not just brilliant speed. He's really game. You saw it in the Gallant Bob last year. He doesn't go down without a fight, so that's a feather in the cap of Ben Tornado. The number 11 Mulligan is a horse who has the speed figures to compete with this field. We saw 2 and 3 back when he was second to Bookham Dano in both the True North and the AG Vanderbilt, getting buyers of 104 and 106. That makes him highly competitive with all of the favorites in this race. I guess the big question, Mike, is what happened last time in the Forgo, because he just couldn't keep up from the start and was totally empty by the time they got to the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, he finally regressed last time after, 3, I know it's been a limited campaign for him, but 3 really hard races to start off the year for this horse. You mentioned the 2 Saratoga races behind Bookham Dano, and he was bang up in those 2 races, just not as good as Bookham Dano, but this horse ran really well in those races. Even the start off the layoff that we've already talked about, that Churchill Downs race a couple of times, a loaded field. This horse ran way better than it might look on paper in that race too. And he finally regressed last time. I appreciate the fact though that his connections after that race, they didn't try to go for another prep with this horse. They freshened him up. They're going to bring him back now in the Breeders' Cup. He's drawn outside. He's got speed, but he showed in this race last year, David, that he can run if he doesn't make the early lead. He ran really well in this race to be 3rd last year. I don't know, man. I've never been a big fan of this horse. I feel like now he's gonna get overlooked in this race, and he does have a top effort that's going to put him right there at the end.
Yeah, he was the favorite in this race last year, and he's probably going to be a much bigger price this time around. The number 12 Straight No Chaser, he was the winner of the 2024 Breeders' Cup Sprint, and he ran really well to get the job done that day, Mike, because he's a horse who generally is at his best when he is able to make the lead, and he didn't even get to the front in last year's Breeders' Cup Sprint. He stalked outside, was able to wear down a very game Ben Tornado to win that race with Mulligan staying on for 3rd. So that was a legitimate performance. The big question with Straight No Chaser is, where is he at right now relative to that form from a year ago? Because obviously things didn't go well in the Golden Shaheen when we saw him 2 back, the second start over in the Middle East. He didn't make the lead, didn't run his race, and then was off for a long time. Came back in that Santa Anita Sprint Championship behind Imagination, and it just looked like he got really tired at the end of that race.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, listen, maybe he just really needed it, and he's gonna benefit from that run, and he's gonna move forward now. It's certainly a possibility. I was disappointed in him last time, and I was even more disappointed in his Golden Sheen. He was really bad in that race, and that's the one that sort of makes me feel like maybe he hasn't really come back as good as a 6-year-old. If he can bounce back here and run his good race, he could make it 2 in a row at the Breeders' Cup. I'm kind of taking a negative view on this horse, especially with all the other speed he's going to have to deal with early in this race.
The number 13 Madhouse has basically turned into a new horse over the course of his last 4 starts. They are all blowout victories, showing a ton of early speed and throwing off at the end. And one of those was a graded stakes last time when he upset the grade 2 Gallant Bob at 23-1. He did beat a name recognition horse in Barnes that day, but Barnes didn't really show up in that race. So I don't want to give Madhouse too much credit. And like, he's a horse that just is going to have to run a faster speed figure, though he is likely to impact the early stages of this race.
Yeah, you're going to know this horse early. They have no choice from post 13 but to use his speed and see what happens. 4 big wins in a row, and so his connections will, take a shot at a huge prize here. I'll be shocked if he wins.
And rounding out the field on the outside, the number 14, What You Talking About, a New York bred who does have one big triple-digit buyer speed figure on his resume, but that was going all the way back to January of this year against a much weaker field. More recently, his form has been up and down. He didn't have an ideal trip last time in the Phoenix, Mike, but I would make that point more strongly if he was coming back in, let's say, a 3rd-level allowance race or something like that, not the Breeders' Cup Sprint.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't think he's good enough to win a race like this. We'll see what happens. He's another horse. He's going to be a big price. I don't want to knock him. If you like him, you should just bet him. I'm just not a big fan.
Well, before we get to our picks for this race, I want to let everybody know a little bit about Morning Line. Unlock access to some of racing's most coveted bloodlines. Mares and colts connected to championship pedigrees. Morning Line is a private SEC-regulated marketplace where approved participants can trade licensed interest in elite racehorses. No ongoing costs. Build your stable only at morningline.io. Let's take a look at our picks for this Breeders' Cup Sprint. And Mike, I see you also have plenty of respect for Copian. I put her on top. Yeah. I'm not confident that the trip is going to be ideal from the rail. I just love her form this year sprinting, and she has been training so well into this race. If the trip works out, I think she can beat the boys.
I agree. Of the horses, especially the horses that are going to be shorter prices in here, I really prefer her. I think she fits right in with these horses. I want to take a little shot with Mulligan because I do think his good race will put him there, and I do think he's going to be a good price in this race. So I just, switched and put him on top at the end. I'll take a small shot with him. I'm also definitely going to use Banished, and I know there's things working against him in this race. I'm using that horse at a price.
11, 1, 2, 10 for Mike, and 1, 10, 9, 2 for me in the Breeders' Cup Sprint Race 6 on Breeders' Cup Saturday. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.